Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
All right, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us on that incredibly long introduction that we got there. I certainly appreciate it. We're trying some fun new things here on the podcast. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. It is the 13th day of October. Did we make it? We're almost halfway through the month of October.
We're there. Yeah.
We're almost there. Well, thank you for joining us. We are live on the podcast, and thank you everyone for joining us for the People Leaders Roundtable. I am thrilled to welcome 3 tremendous ladies from the world of talent and people. And we're going to go around the horn and do a quick introduction. I'm going to go to my left, right? It's like the Brady Bunch here. We'll go to Veracelle, Vega. Nice to see you. How's it going?
Good. Thank you so much, Adam, for having me on the show. I'm so excited to be here. And Caitlin and Simone, it's lovely to meet you all as well.
Awesome. Good stuff. And if you could just give everybody a quick introduction, who you are and the lovely company that you work for.
Sure. So my name is Veracelle Vega, and I am the Chief People Officer at Resident Home. We are a house of direct-to-consumer brands in the home goods space, but you probably know us through the award-winning Nectar mattress, which has been around since 2016. It's the coolest mattress out there, and we are crushing the competition.
Well, we'll certainly talk about it. We'll put the discount code for everybody in the comments.
Absolutely post that. Everybody gets a mattress. And
we'll go Brady Bunch style underneath to Caitlin. How's it going?
Good. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be chatting with all you guys. My name's Caitlin Lillie. I'm the Managing Director of Talent here at Work & Co. Work & Co. is a design and technology company, so we make digital tools and experiences like mobile apps, e-commerce platforms, chatbots, websites, a lot of things people use every day in their lives, and our goal is to make lives easier through digital. We have about 400 people across the US, South America, Europe, and work with clients like IKEA and Apple. So as on a part of the talent team, I work across kind of recruiting, onboarding, team planning, really making sure that we're giving people opportunities to grow and hopefully stay happy at Work & Co.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And Simone joining us from somewhere else. Is that the ocean we see behind you over there?
It is indeed. I am currently in Cabo, but I'm regularly in LA. Thanks so much for having me. It's pretty exciting to be part of this. I also loved the intro, despite it being slightly long. It's cool.
There's a method there. We'll get to that later.
Oh, absolutely. There's always a method to every bit of madness, right? Well, thanks all. I actually am currently partnering with a company that's based out of LA. Specifically, it's a media company, right? So there's a portfolio of sort of companies within it. It's called Whip Media Group. And specifically, we have an app, which you may have heard about. It's called TV Time. You can download it, and it helps consumers track what television shows they're watching. We have quite a few million active users, which is really exciting. And then on top of it, we have a B2B SaaS platform, which helps a lot of large entertainment companies track sort of the transactions. And I mean, there's a ton of stuff. We are essentially like a data and analytics platform for them. And then we also have the TVDB, which is a metadata database, which is, sort of like a Wikipedia for metadata. So it's really cool. We have like a really fantastic, holistic array of different products and services that help the media industry, which, eventually helps you get to like tune in and watch TV. We have about 150 people globally, and I currently partner with them and head up recruiting for them. We've hired about 36 people since January. So it's been a really exciting and, tumultuous couple of months.
Well, thank you for that perfect segue, and everyone, I certainly appreciate the introduction. As Simone said, it's been crazy. So I'm going to try to avoid the word unprecedented. I think that's a buzzword du jour that people are just like, I don't want to hear the word unprecedented anymore, but it really describes what's been happening. I mean, it's different. It's caused all of us to do things differently, to change things, and to use another buzzword is pivot, which we'll get into. But as I said to you guys in the email up front, I want to keep everything positive. So before we get to the positivity, let's actually get some of the bad stuff out of the way. And I'd love to kind of address some of the negative. Unfortunately, like a lot of companies have had to lay off people, and it's been really tough. And I wanted to just get an understanding of how each of you have had to deal with that within your own organizations and what challenges you have faced. We'll start down at the bottom. We'll switch it up with Caitlin.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it has been a really tough few months for, I think, an economy as a whole. We're really grateful we didn't have any layoffs. I think we're really lucky as a company to be working in the digital space. So when so many companies were having to close their kind of brick and mortar locations and kind of figuring out what the new world looked like for them, we were able to help a lot of companies make that transition because we already have digital designers and strategists and developers and product leaders. And these are the kind of roles that are really responsible for creating those types of digital products and tools that people needed to be able to transition. And because we already had them, we already have, leaders who are very much hands-on, we were able to make a pretty smooth transition for companies and really kind of help support them through that time. So again, we feel really, really fortunate to be in that place because I know not everybody was.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. And some companies those are part of the silver linings. I mean, some companies, depending on your industry, have been accelerated hiring. And it's been great because they've been able to acquire some folks that have been let go. Veracelle, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, also put us into the really lucky category, similar to Caitlin as well. I have to say that we have been extremely fortunate. People are buying mattresses. And I think too, even when you think of March and April, and, oh my God, it seems just so long ago too. I have to say that I'm really proud of our company. I'm really proud of the leadership team. We kind of came together, locked arms, like, we're still going to try to make this the best culture ever. We launched an engagement survey not too long, probably in June, where, it kind of showed in everything that we did. People trusted us. From the company perspective, our leaders came together. We were stronger than ever. And even in the home goods space, like, knock on wood, people are buying mattresses, they're furnishing their homes. And we could not be more fortunate about that, which we're incredibly lucky for. So.
And that's, it's a silver lining. I mean, we talk about a lot of these industries, home improvement, home renovations and decorating, and people are spending more time at home and they wanted to. I mean, my lead client right now is a wine manufacturer, and sales are 4x year over year. And for better or worse, people are drinking more. And, there's a lot of positive to it. And obviously some bad stuff associated with it. But these are the things that we're seeing. Simone, what about yourself?
Totally. So, I mean, it's insane just to watch sort of the economy and the effects of this. And I think, to kind of dwell on the negative for a quick second, like, who knows what this will look like, in the future, right? We're all, sort of being positive and optimistic. I think, specifically with regard to WIT Media, we've really been, fortunate, along with Caitlin and Veracelle. Like, I think, we have been in a situation where people are watching more television. They're actually like, honed in on television, similar to mattresses, similar to like, workspaces and all of that. Like it's a really important aspect of your life, right? Because you're basically at home all day, you're working. You need to like cool off and get your mind off of something else and feel like you're pulling away from what you're doing day to day. So you're watching more TV and therefore you're tracking more TV. Therefore, there are more transactions that we're tracking as a company. So, we've not seen it hit us as harshly as it has hit other industries like hospitality, travel. I mean, I'm currently in Mexico, and it's insane because if you really think about the number of travelers and tourism, it's such a trickle down effect from an economic perspective. You see people that are selling to tourists and they have seen a huge drop off in their income. So this is certainly not going to be a situation that's solved in the next, we're going to see the impact of this on the economy for years to come. But yeah, very lucky for us. We've been able to add on 36 plus people to the organization since January. We've been hiring through the pandemic. We've also been able to pick up talent from companies that unfortunately have had to make layoffs. So we're in a fortunate state at the moment.
It's really interesting too, and something that I've observed, like being an in the trenches, on the ground recruiter, is that there's an incredible amount of A-list talent that's on the market right now, and that's fantastic if you're in growth mode. However, if let's be honest, let's have a transparent conversation here. If you're a B or a C player, B or C candidate, it is even tougher right now. I mean, this is reality of it, right? And not every candidate could be an A candidate, and it's pushing people further down. So it's one of those things, right, where if you're a company, it's good to take advantage of it. Let's get the best of the best right here. But unfortunately, we're pushing people down there. Caitlin, what are you seeing there as far as available talent on the market? And are you seeing, there's another trend that I saw where folks are maybe looking at roles maybe a little bit lower because I don't want to use the word desperate, but they're out of work. And us as employers, right, say like they're a director and they're looking at a senior manager role, and I say to them, hey, listen, obviously you're qualified, you're fantastic for the role, but honestly, my fear is that you're going to come in and then 10, 12 weeks later, you're going to be like, all right, I have another offer that's higher for where I was. And it's making for some really tough conversations. I'd love to hear from all three of you what you're seeing on the ground. We could start with Kate.
I mean, for us, we are hearing, like you guys were saying, it's really changed the talent landscape, right? We're hearing from, yes, we're hearing from people who unfortunately have been laid off and they're looking for what's next. We're also hearing from employed people too, though. I think as everybody, I too will avoid the word unprecedented, right? But
we'll put a little ticker up there on the box.
As we're kind of in a very new space, I think it has encouraged a lot of people to really think about where do they want to be spending their weeks? What kind of work will make them happy, and who do they want to be spending their time with? So I think from that perspective, we're hearing from some people who are again reimagining what they might want to be doing in the future. And I think also to that point, we've also heard from, for lack of a better term, some boomerangs, right? So some people who had previously left and are doing some of that thinking, and they're saying, that is where I want to be. I'd love to come back. I'd love to work with you guys. So I think, even as people explore different roles, as people explore different levels, I think there's more of an emphasis on, are they doing something they're excited about, something that's going to speak to their passions, and are they doing it with people who they feel like they can learn from?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Veracelle, what are you seeing on your front?
Yeah, we're in the, primarily with our customer service folks. We are constantly hiring. And again, we're extremely grateful for that. But there's a couple things. One, we are extremely proud of the culture that we have and the culture that we built, specifically in a remote culture. And so not only do we think we have the best products out there too, but it's also in an environment and in a remote environment that you want to see you want to love the coworkers that you see every day.
That's tough.
And we're really, really proud of it. And so it's adding, I like to say culture add, of folks that also want to be in this kind of space where, one, you have to be naturally curious. You can't sit still. We look for hustle, which actually should be one of our values there. Like, you just want to get stuff done. You want to be in a company where you see what it takes to go from a startup all the way to, we want to be even bigger and bigger. And so we do look for that factor that, may not be prevalent in other companies, or they may not be looking for that. But I think hustle is always there. And pandemic or not, we've always looked for hustle. Now, it's really hard to, I want to say the word unprecedented 10,000 times. And it's also uncharted. I hear that word a lot too. But
they count the same thing. It means the same.
Yeah. So I'll try not
to half a point.
Say that. But yeah, the quality of what we've always looked for in candidates has always remained there. But it's one of those things that we have seen an intake of folks that are looking, but we still go back to the qualities that we look for that will be successful at Resident.
You're not gonna change your standards at all. Simone, besides sunny skies and sand, what are you seeing on your front?
Totally. I think, it's really interesting. We've all said this, right? It's saturated for sure. The market's gotten saturated. I think it's also really interesting to watch a couple of the bigger companies. They've done a lot of interestingly timed layoffs. And this is, a large amount of the tech companies, a large amount of our sort of blue chip companies. And they've done, layoffs based on a number of things. Obviously, I think COVID is the pandemic rather is sort of where they're laying the blame. But you've seen quite a few as a result of just performance, and they've made cuts over the years. Just in terms of where they are in terms of their revenue, and there's a lot of interesting stuff that I'm seeing that isn't necessarily all 100% pandemic related. So I think we've got this really saturated employee population, right, in terms of candidate population rather, and then on top of it you've got a lot of these companies making strategic cuts, right, and again, performance based on other things outside of the pandemic, and then on top of it we're working and partnering with a lot of hiring managers who, as a result of the market, are becoming picky. So I find the biggest thing that you'd find, just in terms of, what people are doing is a much longer hiring cycle, which I find really interesting, and I think that's, again, like it's a trickle down effect, right? You've got like a lot of people in the market, you've got a lot of good people in the market, you've got a lot of people that have been affected by layoffs, not related necessarily to the pandemic. And then you've got this other wave of like, hiring managers having a really tough decision, process. Like, what do you do? Like, and this is, some of the things that we've taken action on, specifically at WIP is, hey, we need to be more assessment focused. We need to begin to, continue to build on the structure of our hiring process already. I mean, we had a fairly good process that I put into place when I first joined the team. But let's double down on that. Let's make things really, really, really standardized across the board. Let's try and cut bias out of it. And again, bias when it comes to, people who are unemployed, right? A lot of hiring managers.
It is a bias. It is a bias.
Yep.
And we'll definitely talk about biases in a little bit.
Right, totally. So I think that that's a big thing. We've seen that the hiring process taking longer as a result of a lot of stuff that's going on in the market. And then I think on top of it, what we've proactively done is really tried to cut down on, as much indecision. We need like a lot of like data. We need a data-driven hiring process, basically. So that's what I've seen.
And fantastic. And you're bringing up the word data, and I know it's a hot button and a passion point for Caitlin over there. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you specifically in Work & Co. have used any of the pandemic-related data to influence your process, your current process, whether it be speed to hire, whether it be time in between, points in the process, anything there.
Yeah, I think that the types of conversations that we're having are very similar. The place where we're really seeing data change, and it's on a slightly different front, is around onboarding and what we're seeing there. Right. So our speed to hire remains pretty consistent. We're really good at moving people through the process and then figuring out, do we want to stay in touch with them for the future? Do we want to hire them now? And we're really good at maintaining those relationships for the long term. We're seeing that we need to put a lot more emphasis on the feedback that we're hearing and the data we're getting out of onboarding and making sure that we're setting people up for success there. I think that's the main place where yes, we have data around more applicants and seeing more people coming in, but that's where we've seen that we can tweak our process to make people successful in the long term.
That's fantastic. Veracelle, what are you saying?
I was just going to jump in and ask a question about onboarding, actually. So are you saying, is it related? I mean, is this sort of different in terms of the onboarding data than you'd normally find? Like, is it a result of the fact that we're remotely onboarding people? Is that
exactly?
Okay, got it. I was like trying to understand like the reason for that. Okay, cool.
And we're gonna get to onboarding in a little bit too, and what the difference is between having someone come in and give them that welcome experience and really immersing them in the brand there too. But I want to give Veracelle an opportunity here to speak about from the data perspective, and even qual, it doesn't matter. Any type of feedback that you're getting from candidates and your internal hiring teams, and how you're reincorporating that into your process.
Right. I mean, for us, it's always been about not even customer feedback, but we like to say I've been at Resident for a year, and our first year was about building processes, building a structure. And you think, you go back to board presentations and like, how do we measure? And so for us, it's always like we measure this through surveys. We do tons of surveys through feedback because it is the only way for us of like how we quantify. Are we doing good? Are we not doing good? What else can be tweaked? And I know we're going to talk about onboarding a little bit too, but one of the things that we're instituting there is like, how was your onboarding experience? Not even from a day one perspective, but a week one, even a month long.
Were you set up for success? Do you feel set up for success? How connected are you with your hiring managers? How responsive is your team?
Right. So we live and breathe by data. We love metrics. I'm really fortunate that even on the people team, we love data so much, and we love analyzing it and tweaking it to see what we can do to make it better. But for us, it's a quantifier of how we're measuring our success.
That's fantastic. Let's take it back to, we'll call it March 13th, because that was my D-Day. That was a day that I had to.
Yeah.
That was my D-Day. That was a day that I had to cancel my trip to South by. That's when I knew that the shit hit the fan and we were done. And I'm like, we're in this for the long haul. I want to understand how each one of you worked with your teams, your leadership teams, the executive teams, to say, all right, this is a unprecedented situation. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to take everyone remote that was in the office? And some of your companies I know are a little bit more remote friendly, but it's still taking that entire process from how you engage with your immediate close teams to how does that translate to candidates that are in process to future hires. We could start back at the bottom there with Simone.
Awesome. So yeah, what a shit show that was, right?
Yeah,
it's just, like,
to say the least.
Completely insane.
And shit show's our second expression that we've heard.
I think the number one thing was to just begin to be, and again, like it was interesting timing for me personally because I run my own consulting business and I just started consulting with this company, and I really spent a lot of good chunk of 2 months basically with this company, with Media Group, and I'd met a lot of the leaders and I had started building relationships. I spent some time in New York City at our offices there. We're actually based globally, so we have an office in New York, LA, as well as the UK. And the number one thing that I think we needed to figure out, and again, the leadership team there was fantastic. They had a strong direction that they decided on pretty immediately. I think that's the key thing. You have to be decisive in a situation where there is so much, people just don't know what this is going to look like in the future. So it was beautifully run initially. Like they were like, okay, we're not going to go into the office. We're not going to make people feel the need to go into the office. We're going to go 100% remote. And then the way that I think it translated on the recruiting end of the house is we started to have to build best practices, right? When it came to like online, remote interviewing, when it came to like, what are the best, case scenarios? What are the worst case scenarios? How do people work through that? So I think being really prescriptive as a people team. And of course, on some level, I was a one-woman band. I was like, sourcing. I was also like doing a lot of the phone screens. I was doing everything because that's how, it is when you're in startup life. But I think the key thing is we had a really strong team when it came to direction. And then also we began as a people team to be really prescriptive in our approach to, what we were going to do and what that looked like for candidates. And of course, in terms of data, and you guys mentioned this before, but like we were really also trying to listen to candidate experience and understand, was this working? Was it not working? Whenever I did get confidential feedback from a candidate, that was key to bring it to the senior people and just like think through how we can change our system.
It has to be real time. It has to be iterative, and you have to be able to shift on the fly. Yeah. Veracelle, when it comes to the process, let's talk about the process, and kind of bring us up to speed here. What % of the company is remote versus on-site?
Sure. So we actually started as a remote company, and
that piece was already there. That culture piece.
Yeah, so it was there, and then it was only over the last year that we started building a headquarters in New York. It's interesting because we just kind of finished putting our New York showroom together. We had all the mattresses there and it was all exciting. And then March 13th hit. So I want to say that for us, it was actually super easy to pivot back to going to a distributed workforce. I want to say too, I credit our leadership team. I credit our CEOs. It is this trickle down effect. And for us, first and foremost, it was health, it was safety. And so we had all hands probably 2 weeks later, went off without a hitch. It was all good. It was like business was humming, as usual. But and I say this to some HR folks too, that I know, like, if you ask any HR person last year, like, what are you going to focus on next year? What's on your roadmap? Nobody would have ever thought, like going to remote fully or putting return to work or COVID or best practice in the room, like nothing. And so you had to, I won't say it was a rude awakening, but like, nope, we have to do this right now because we are going to be completely behind if we don't pay attention to this. So there was a lot of forward thinking of, we have no idea what the end of the year is going to look like. We still don't know, right?
There's no time frame on it. There's no date on it.
Exactly. But let's pivot. Let's do this as quickly as we can. And I have to credit, we all, there's a lot of empathy there. And then there's also a lot of it's also the health and safety. And for us, that was just first and foremost. It's interesting because it was 2 weeks ago, I went to the office for the first time in a long time, and it almost looked like a time capsule. And
like mummified, right? It was like King Tut's tomb. I think there's dust over it, there's cobwebs, and people were frozen like Pompeii. Like it was weird, right?
It was weird. Like you saw calendars.
The clocks were stopped. The monitor was on, like March. Calendars.
It was very strange and sad and like all these emotions at the same, but we have since decided we're going to use our space as it's collaboration. I think I hear that word now. It's a collaboration space that we're going to use over the next, year or two as we try to figure out what this new normal is going to look like. But you have to be, going back to the question, you have to be just like first and foremost ready, just to make sure that we're going on the right track.
Absolutely, and it's a tough one, and the thread that has emerged here from a lot, because I hear a lot from my side as a recruiter. There's candidates and folks that never want to go back to the office.
Right.
There's people that can't wait to go back to the office because for whatever reasons they're not in the great environment at home. Some people are not productive. I personally think that younger employees need to be in the office there too, and there's other people that want a hybrid. But ultimately, it comes down to employees and candidates wanting to be trusted, that they're going to get the work done wherever they are and have the ability, if they want to return to the office and be collaborative, they have that option, that they're safe and secure. Caitlin, what are you doing at Work & Co. to establish this, to sustain this, and to communicate this to your current employees and to candidates?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the communication piece has been really key. I mean, as you guys were saying, being definitive around, okay, these are the immediate steps we're taking when we first went out, and then also communicating with people throughout around the updates, and also listening to our employees, like what were their concerns? When we first went out on March 13th or whatever our kind of final day was, I think people didn't really know what they needed going out. They didn't know what their questions were going to be. And so a couple weeks later, we found, okay, we're going to have to open the office for different appointments so people can come get chairs. They can come get monitors. Like things we
I need
had
my water bottle.
Exactly. Everybody needs a water bottle. You have to hydrate. So I think, really listening to employees about needs on that. And then later, other questions came up around, okay, well, if we're working remotely, what does that mean? What does that look like? And being really thoughtful about what questions people have and providing guidelines, and then making sure those guidelines were easily accessible. I think one of the most striking things for me on the interview process was candidates. We were talking to candidates and making hires for people who had never been into our office.
Yeah, that's on my list here. That's really point number 5 here I wanted to talk about.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so how do you help them understand who we are when they haven't been to the office? How do you communicate that through the process? And so trying out different things there, hearing from candidates, making sure that they feel who we are, making sure they understand what the expectations will be, and that they also have the communication to kind of navigate that ambiguity as best we all can.
And thank you. And Simone, what are you seeing at WEP?
In terms of
the process, has it been iterative? What have you seen it, has it changed, continuous learning, adapting?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, as I said, sort of the very beginning, when you initially asked the question, I think 100%, we've had to, double down. I think, thankfully our leadership was super, super, super prescriptive in terms of what we were doing as a company. And then in terms of just the onboarding, that's been a big frustration point, making sure that hiring managers understand the responsibilities that they have in that process, also ensuring that, new employees do feel really, really welcome through a process that is super weird. I mean, can you imagine a year ago joining a company and not knowing anything about what the office looked like, and not, and I think, as we iterate, it'll continue to get better. I think, specifically, I could see us doing tours of the office in the future for candidates, like ad hoc, socially distanced tours. Like that could be really cool. Yeah, just giving people an understanding of what they're getting into. I've sent photos through to candidates, which is really fun. Giving them a sense of what things were like. Speaking of time capsules.
Back in the old days when we went to work.
Yeah, precisely. But I think in terms of the other aspect, it's really being thoughtful and really urging hiring managers as well as employees to understand how challenging this period is. I think people tend to be hyper-focused, especially at a digital company where remote isn't really necessarily affecting the workflow too much. Really reminding people how to, participate in this sort of situation, reminding them, empathy. That's a really thing that we need to remember through this process. We need to thank people for their time and understanding and patience and all of that. So I think that that's been a big area. I mean, generally, we've iterated a few times with process here and there. There's nothing specific that we were doing that doesn't work, and vice versa. It's continuing to just make sure that people are enjoying the process and being really data driven and understanding what's working and what isn't. But yeah, it's been a really challenging yet thought-provoking time. I think a lot of hiring managers have been far more open to remote now
Yeah.
We have a number of really hard to fill, and I'm sure you guys have felt this way as well, but like we have a number of really hard to fill tech roles specifically where, hey, 6 months ago, hiring managers would have been hands down, not ever. We're not having somebody remote. We don't understand it. And now everyone's super open to it. So there is a certain
it's a silver lining.
Right, as you've said. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen that with my clients too, where they were set for their brick and mortar locations, and now it's done something else as well too. And let's call it what it is. I mean, there's a cost of living difference between some of the major markets, and there's an incredible amount of talent in the middle of the country that's untapped. And I think it's brought a lot of new opportunities to companies. And it's adding to culture because it's diversifying that not everyone's from New York, Chicago, Miami, LA, San Fran. There, it's definitely diversifying from that perspective. And we'll talk about D&I a little bit later on. But Veracelle, I want to talk a little bit. I want to dig into this process point when it comes to interviewing, because as we all know, body language, gut feeling, that chemistry is so important. And your company is interesting because it's been relatively remote before there. So what are some of those practices and tactics to say, all right, well, I met Adam. I spoke to him on a Zoom call. He's funny. He's kind of good looking. I kind of get a good feel from him. Just kidding. But like, how do you get that feeling from somebody that say, this is somebody I want on my team. This is somebody that gives me a good vibe. They have a good energy. And I know they're going to, I don't like to use the word fit, but they're going to be a mesh. They're going to mesh into our quilt of our fabric of an organization.
Right. Well, our recruiter, she ran into this a couple of times too, and no offense to some candidates, but while we are a mattress company, we're also extremely tech forward. And so everything is via Zoom or Google Hangouts. And I think originally we thought everybody knows how to use Google Hangouts or, is tech savvy with that. And so we put into place little things like make sure your camera's on.
Make sure your pants are on.
Just these little kind of housekeeping things that you never would have thought of before. But for us, we're still looking for energy. We're still looking for that. Would you buy badges from this person specifically on the customer success side? But you have to be you just have to be tech savvy with this, and so that's always kind of been there. And so we look for that. And if it's not represented in the interviews, it's not coming across, or you have someone who just doesn't want to show their face on camera, and you have to nowadays, specifically as a recruiter. I mean, that is like, if you can't go into the office or even get a tour of what the culture is like, this has to be brought through. And, specifically from the recruiting team, from the hiring manager, is much of these little glimpses into who we are as a culture as possible through people, because you're not going to have that. We can go like this and like, hey, look at, this is what we did last year, and here's what some of these pictures that we did, but it needs to come through in personality. And so we look at a lot.
And Caitlin, what about you? How much of the workforce was remote versus on-site pre-COVID?
So we were actually pretty much all on site pre-COVID. We do have offices around the world, so we weren't necessarily all working in the same office together, but that in-person collaboration was really important. So it's been interesting because in the interview space, it's kind of gotten rid of some of the previous limitations that candidates might have had, where everybody's on Zoom. So it's just as easy for me to talk to somebody on Zoom if they're in Brooklyn as if they're in Montana, and I think that that's been really nice because, to your earlier point, it's opened up more networks. It's easy to hop on a call with somebody for 15 minutes who seems like they could be a good fit. It also does add that added challenge to some candidates where you have to come in as your full self. Like, how do you show your passions, your interests? How do you help me understand who you are so I can understand how you bring all that added value to Work & Co? And so it's nice because it kind of adds a little bit of an advantage, but also, puts a little pressure on people to really deliver and not come off as kind of flat within the Zoom space.
No, I appreciate that, Caitlin. And are there questions that, whether they be standard or just basically in training, that your recruiters, to get those personal things, it's not, tell me what you love to do outside of work, but things to really understand what people's passions are and what drives them?
Yeah, I think a lot of it can come out of understanding how that person likes to be hands-on. Within our model, even the most senior people, even the partners, are submitting design, submitting code, they're opening up Sketch or Figma. So we are looking for people who are interested in doing that, who have a passion for their craft in that sense. And so understanding what they have been doing, what their goals are in their next role, and really digging deep on that helps us kind of unlock that. I mean, also, we're looking for people who have pretty diverse professional backgrounds, right? So we have product managers who used to be designers, or designers who used to be developers. And that really helps us flex in different ways. It helps us meet project needs in different ways. So the more somebody can highlight that, and the more we can dig into that to understand how that contributes to them as a whole, the better sense we can get from people. And, I think that it helps when people can talk about how their passions contribute to what they're doing. Like, I want to know the full person. It's really important for us that we're supporting people just as much outside the office as we are in the office. So all of that comes together is really important.
That's fantastic. And Simone, similar, I mean, you've had the opportunity to work in a number of organizations. I mean, when you're talking to candidates at all different levels, are there some, I don't want to say trick questions, but are there some techniques you use to really bring out somebody's, passion and personality during a conversation? Because sometimes people are all business, and that's fine too sometimes. But you do want to see that level of passion and enthusiasm, especially either about why do you want to work here and those type of things. So what are some of the recruiting tricks that you have up your sleeve?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's key. I think regardless of, whether it's a pandemic or not, there is a level of, just straight shooting, that I think you need to have. You need to have that banter with a candidate and begin to build a relationship and a rapport where, they feel comfortable opening up. And I think that's the key thing, as that first point of contact on the recruiting end of things, whether it's a recruiting coordinator, whether it's a sourcer, whether it's you, whether it's your recruiter, it's really key for there to be an open line of communication. So I think, asking for feedback at that point is a really nice way of doing that. Obviously you're building a relationship, you're trying to understand what they've done with their life. You're asking them a lot of deeply personal questions. Oh, why'd you leave that job? What'd you do in this job? The
motivators.
Exactly. Motivators, like all of that stuff. And I think the key thing is to really continue to ask for feedback through the process. And again, like this isn't necessarily, quantity in the sense that we're asking them for some kind of survey. Like it's just a personal thing. Hey, so like, have you enjoyed this process so far? Like what I do this at every touch point that I have with a candidate. How have things been going? How is your, chat with that person? What did you learn? What are some of the issues or concerns that you're having? I think the more open lines of communication that you have with candidates as they move through the process, the more open, honesty that you'll have about their motivations for leaving jobs, their motivations for being interested in your job, and then eventually fit. Like, I think coming to an organization and adding to that organization and, having that, it's so important. I mean, I think it's also reflective, frankly, of our, current culture. Like we're super open with each other. Through this whole process, I think companies have become even more open with each other, right? Like
vulnerability.
Employees, yeah, totally. We are all in a very vulnerable state. Exactly. So I think that's a key indicator.
No, that's really insightful, and it brings up a couple of things I brought in there. But I want to throw a curveball into the conversation here. A question that I love to ask, and I'm going to go to my top right corner. I don't know if that's what people see at home here. Veracelle, if you have a brand new recruiter on your team, somebody who's literally fresh out of wherever, fresh out of school, what is the number one piece of advice that you would give him or her to be successful in our industry? You're all going to get the same question, so think about it.
In the tech,
in recruiting, in talent access, in the people industry.
That's a great question. One, it's the experience. Like you, and I know all of you have had this too. You just want to have this open level of conversation with the recruiter that they're really trying to help. Like they're really justified in trying to help you. Not that they're doing a 2-second look at your resume. All right, bye-bye. But having those connections. And I've met thousands of recruiters through my experience, and like the ones that you feel that connection to, and be it because, I don't know, school or we like baseball or swimming or something like that. But there's a connection there. And you can see it, and it comes, and it sometimes comes out naturally. Sometimes like, oh, there's absolutely not a connection here. But if you don't have that synergy, it's going to be hard to translate that into why we're trying to sell them into our company, or kind of vice versa. So for me, it goes to chemistry on there. And there's some recruiters that are just really great at what they do with a certain type of folks. Others, not so much. But I've met thousands throughout my career where like Yeah, they have it's the touch points, it's that high level that you feel as though you are the only customer and
You're the only candidate in the
you're the
process.
only candidate in the process, but also being just like really open with you too. And we are stepping on our recruiting, which is a really good job. Like here's how it's going. You, to Simone's point too, you want like, how's it going? Like here's what's going to go on. I'd rather have that honesty up front than right before an offer is made.
Yeah.
And
transparency as much as possible. And Caitlin, same question to you. What advice do you give for people to be successful in our industry?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about empathy and really trying to understand whether it's a candidate or a current employee, where that person is coming from, what they're feeling in that moment, what their goals might be, to make sure that we can help them, whatever that might be. Are they feeling stressed? I mean, boy, has that been a big topic, during COVID, is really trying to understand, are they feeling stressed? What kind of support do they need? Same thing in the recruiting process. This person's making a very big change. So whether it's a perfect fit and we really want to help them feel at ease, really make sure they understand what next steps are going to look like, or if it's not a perfect fit and we want to stay in touch for the future, still handling that really delicately so we can maintain that relationship and hopefully put them on a track to find something that will be a really good fit. But always trying to find that place of empathy and put yourself in their shoes so that we can make sure we're handling it in an appropriate way that they're going to feel good about too.
Fantastic. And Simone, bring us home here on this question. I'd love to get your perspective. What is that golden piece of advice for folks, new to our industry?
Funny you should say golden, because I think it's a golden rule. I don't do.
See, I set that up.
Think about yourself. Perfect, right? Think about yourself going through the process. Listen. I find recruiting, and we've all been interviewed by recruiters ourselves, right? Listen. Don't keep kind of peppering the conversation with your own feedback, your own perspective. Listen. That's the key thing. The second thing is, do not forget to respond to an email.
Absolutely.
Do not ghost people. That is not okay.
You have enough time in the day.
You have enough time in the day to respond to an email. If you don't make time in your day, we are all in a time where people are vulnerable. People are losing jobs. They're gaining jobs, but we can't be insensitive and not respond. Do you know how many times people have ghosted me in a process? It's insane.
Yeah.
You need to remember not to ghost people. And then the other thing is, if you don't have the understanding, or if you don't have visibility into something, learn. Go ask somebody for the answer. Don't, bullshit your way through the process. Find out the answer from someone and get that answer to a candidate. If you need time, go back to the candidate and say, look, give me a couple of days to get this answer. We'll noodle on this.
Over communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the other thing is just think outside the box. When you're trying to close a really senior candidate who's really got great experience, they're open to it. We had a great, fantastic candidate a couple of months ago. And the key thing was, what are things that are outside of just compensation and outside of culture and outside of role that are going to be really important to you in the process? What can we do for you that's not, the normal thing? Let's really think outside the box and partner with each other,
Well, you hit the nail on something that I think a lot of recruiters, and I don't want to turn this into a recruiting tactical session there too, but you have to, and I say this to any recruiter that I work with, if a candidate is interviewing with you, you have to assume they're interviewing elsewhere and they're going to be far along in the process, especially if they're a good candidate. And I think a lot of times recruiters kind of fall into this safety net of saying, nope, I got this. This candidate is all mine. They're going to sign with us. We're all good there. And you fall into this comfort zone and it gets you in trouble. And I see it all. And I think we've all been guilty of it at some point in our career. We got this as a perfect candidate. And literally you get a phone call why hasn't he or she called me? Why aren't they not responding? And they took another offer and they didn't even tell you. And a lot of times I see also that the more transparent you are with candidates and lay out expectations early on in the process, you're going to set the expectations for that to come back to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always ask, where else are you interviewing? What else do you have in process? I will be transparent with you. You be transparent with me, and we help each other out. And it usually lays a good groundwork.
Yep, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I think it's something that we all need to start doing if we don't do it already. And if, we continue to do, if we do it, it's great.
Absolutely there. So I want to talk about, in internal teams. I assume that we all have folks that, we manage here. How are we keeping our teams together? How are we keeping those spirits high of our immediate direct reports? Caitlin, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, I think that one of the things we started hearing from our teams internally was around mental health when it came to COVID, right? we were hearing about it more than we have in the past. There were people who were parents who had now become homeschoolers. There were people, we work with a lot of immigrants. There was a lot of stress because they weren't able to return home because of travel restrictions. People were feeling really isolated. So again, like the way that we often refer to the talent space is kind of in a test and learn space where we'll try something, we'll get feedback, we'll iterate on it, try to fill things that maybe, or fill gaps that we haven't filled. So in this place, immediately it was thinking about, okay, so people are feeling stressed. Let's talk about flexibility and working arrangements. What kind of flexibility can we give people during the day? How can we communicate that to teams to make sure that works for everybody? And then we were getting more questions saying, all right, well, I might need some more support. Can you help me understand how existing benefits might support? So then it was about really over communicating to our teams what's covered under our insurance, things like that. How can they get mental health support through teledoc services? And then we started hearing from teams saying, okay, this is great. I do want support. Where do I get that support? Like, how do I find a therapist? Which I know for me was very new territory. I wanted to help people, but also wanted to respect privacy. And in the end, we ended up rolling out a new benefit called Ginger, which provides unlimited coaching and up to 12 therapy sessions per year for employees at no cost to the employee. So just really listening to what they need and really trying to evolve our benefits to deliver on that, to help them stay sane outside the office.
That's interesting. And just out of curiosity, I mean, what was the, if you're open to sharing, like, did folks take advantage of it?
Yes. I know it's, when you introduce a benefit like that, there's a demand, but at the end, you're not sure, will actually people use this? Yeah.
Do they feel like there's going to be a feedback loop? Are they going to report to my employer that, like, hey, I needed some help here? But you have to lay that expectation up front. Hey, this is completely anonymous. We just want to put it out there for you. We don't get any feedback. You don't send us the audio recordings.
Totally. No, Adam, I think that's a really important part. A piece of it is communicating how it works, what it'll be, what our goal is. So making clear that it's completely anonymous, that, you're going to get the code, whether you use the code or not is up to you, but we'll make it as easy as possible. And we had huge engagement on it. And we've continued to get really good feedback. And you also hear from people saying, oh, this was a little tricky. And then we can communicate that back to Ginger. They've been really great about saying, oh, well, we have a way to fix that. So it's been a really good learning, and we're continuing to learn from our employees around other kinds of support that they need. But I think that was one big place where we've seen more change there than we had before COVID.
That's fantastic. And Veracelle, like, how are you keeping that glue together? How are you keeping everyone tight and knit and culture and vibe and energy and spirit? How are you keeping that thriving?
Sure. Well, first of all, like, we look at the people team. We are supposed to be the ambassadors of culture and leading by example. And so 2 parts. We actually have started opening up our people meetings. We have a weekly, and just going around and just like, what are we grateful for? And it seems so simple, and it lasts all of 5 minutes, but we're being extremely intentional before we're jumping in and just getting to XYZ, the agenda, like, how is everyone doing? How are we, and making sure it's a safe place. So we're trying to do that. We're also arming managers and making sure that they are in turn doing this. And like, are you checking in with your folks? Which is hard for some, because you're so used to it, right? We're gonna just, crank through this agenda and XYZ, but we have made a very intentional push of teaching and telling our managers of just make sure you check in. Wellness and mental health is first and foremost also on our radar. We actually, in addition to listing a bunch of services from our benefits providers, and make sure that, like your folks know about XYZ and you're going to that, but we're also over communicating, because I think you have to over communicate, because for us, you can't bring your best self forward unless, mentally you're okay to do that. And also just making sure that our managers are really taking the time to ask, how are you doing? Because it's insightful, some of the answers that you get. And for us, we pride ourselves on having an amazing work-life balance. Like, we work our asses off. And we over deliver, but we also want to balance that with people are struggling to, you're also not only you're doing tech support for your kids, taking care of a dog or whatever, and you don't know the chaos.
Driving them around. Yep.
Everybody has a story, and I think when it starts from the top, and it trickles. We also have CEO office hours where our two co-CEOs once a week. So while we are talking about parts of the business, we're also asking everyone, like, how are you? And sometimes it dives into the TV shows that are watching on Netflix. But I think having that outlet, and if anything could kind of help in terms of making these connections intentionally over Zoom, is going to help a little bit to make the mental health space a little bit more digestible for folks. We're going to keep at it. So
that's awesome.
It starts from the top.
Thank you so much for sharing. Simone, what are you seeing on your front?
Yeah, totally. We've done a couple things. I mean, you guys, those were all some really fantastic ideas, by the way, and stuff that, it sounds like you guys are really working well to think outside the box when it comes to this. I mean, again, this is such a different time for everyone. We've actually, with the entire team going fully remote, we have a town hall once every other week, and then and it sort of swaps up. So one Thursday we'll have a town hall, and then the next Thursday we'll have an all hands. And so what we've been doing is, for the town halls, they're 100% conversational. So basically our CEO is going to just jump on. We'll do some prep. So we'll do a lot of quizzes. We'll do some we'll ask people on Slack for fun question answers. And there's a lot of information we get from people, and that's what drives the conversation. So it could be something around what television shows people are watching, where they want to travel to most after COVID, is kind of over. Will people get the vaccine? Like fun stuff, like water cooler kind of conversations. So that's been really great. And I think that's something that's completely symbolic of the time we're in. We're trying to build relationships over Zoom. And again, we have, 150 plus employees. We're all on Zoom together. So it's a really cool. And then we have the all hands, which are fun. They're more business focused. We have our CEO is Rich Rosenblatt. So we open up the conversation. There's like a hashtag Ask Rich section where people reach out. They've reached out about, upcoming hires. They've reached out about, is the business going to be making layoffs? Like really, really big questions.
Real stuff, real questions, real concerns.
Real stuff. Exactly. So that's a cool one. And then what we're doing soon is we're actually, now that we're kind of, at a point where some people are feeling comfortable, we're doing this thing where, teams can take people to lunch. So, we're giving them like $25 each person. Everyone can kind of order lunch and then go eat outside somewhere. So it's, and again, this is only if people feel comfortable. They can use their $25 to, sit inside and join their teams, via Zoom. But if they are feeling comfortable, hey, go.
I like that's a good one.
We're in LA. Like, thankfully the weather's great. People, it's comfortable enough to sit outside. And that's what we've kind of been trying to get, employees to do if they're comfortable with it, to build rapport, to have them feel comfortable talking about some of the challenges that they have. My dog's not training as well as he was before COVID. Like anything that my kid, the DIY is getting a little, out of hand at home, like all of that kind of stuff. People are, we're encouraging people to feel comfortable and make it feel, as much like the office as possible, so that they have that relationship with their coworkers. They have that camaraderie that they're building.
That's fantastic. So I want to bring it home here with a couple of questions that I'm asking everybody across all my shows. And I want to leave the show off on a good note. Before I do so, let's do a little something fun here. Whether you're watching Netflix or you're reading a good book, what is one piece of content that you want to recommend to somebody else? A show that you're watching, a book that you're reading? We'll start with Caitlin.
Oh, gosh.
We won't judge you either. Like, oh, that show's terrible. Did you really like that show? That show was garbage. No, there's no judgment zone here. We're in talent and HR. We don't judge people in talent. That's the last thing we do.
It's funny because as Veracelle was talking about how sometimes conversations just evolve into Netflix discussions, right? And it's good. Like we find that happens a lot on our team meetings as well. And so somebody had recommended, oh gosh, now I won't be able to remember the name, but there's a Netflix movie. It's a documentary about a guy who researches an octopus that he finds off the coast.
My octopus best friend or something like that, or something. Yeah, My Octopus Teacher. I think it's called My Octopus Teacher.
My Octopus Teacher.
That's what it is.
It's on my list.
So I watched it, at first to be polite, and then was just obsessed with it. I couldn't stop watching it. So I have to say that one was interesting and actually kind of draws you in a little bit.
That's on my wife has dinner planned, so that's literally the number one thing I'm going to watch on Friday night. It's on my list.
All right.
I tried
well,
watching The Social Dilemma. I watched like 15 minutes of it. I knew what it was about, and it depressed me, and I didn't want to watch it anymore. Veracelle, what are you watching, reading, consuming? What when you're not busy managing people? I was about to rearranging the lamps in your office.
Being a boss.
It's funny when you think back to March and you think of like Tiger King, doesn't that seem like so long ago? I did watch Tiger King, but I'm such a nerd when it comes to like organization, and I love design, hence why I'm in my dream job right now. So I'm addicted to the Netflix show, The Home Edit, where literally they just go in and organize closets. If I would spin my computer around, you would see that I actually organize my bookshelves according to color, because that is how crazy I am. So I like a lot of organization shows. I like a lot of baking shows. I like a lot of home design shows. But I did finish Schitt's Creek. It took me forever.
We're halfway through season 2 right now. I'm into it.
It's hilarious. But like Netflix, absolutely, it helps you to bond these water cooler moments over Zoom and over Slack.
And it's okay to disconnect.
It's exactly.
Absolutely.
So watch The Home Edit if you're into design.
Simone, what about you?
I've really gotten into Obey, which is this subscription thing that you can do. They have like 28-minute workouts. They have a bunch of different stuff that it's really fantastic. That's one thing that I've really tried to incorporate working out, because I think it's a great way to, like, it's funny because we've all watched The Social Dilemma. It's a great way to not be on Instagram and actually do something physical where your brain is like trying to, help you balance, as opposed to, looking at what your friends are doing. That's the other thing. And then I think, so New York Magazine has this like highbrow, lowbrow, despicable sort of approval matrix. So I feel like my like highbrow right now is like Plot Against America, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. It's HBO Max at the moment. It's a miniseries. And then there was Emily in Paris, which was my lowbrow moment.
We just watched it, and I enjoyed it. I sat there. I was on my phone. My wife's like, "Just watch it. It's actually," and I'm like, "It's actually pretty entertaining."
It's beautiful.
And it's not for kids. It is not for kids.
No,
My 8-year-old,
not for kids.
we were watching. My 8-year-old had to leave the room. I'm like, "Nope, change it. Not watching it right now."
Great show, though.
Yeah, it's a good one. Well, that's awesome. And I want to end every show on a positive note, as I started the show off too. And we're going to talk about silver linings. I would love for each of you to quickly, we're going to go around the horn here. We'll start with Caitlin. Leave us with one personal silver lining and one professional silver lining that you've experienced over the last 8 months.
Yeah, I mean, the professional silver lining has been around communication, right? And getting to communicate with people more and in new ways. We're now in each other's homes in some ways because we're all on Zoom. And so while I noticed the first 2 weeks, when people would have their dogs run into the room or kids run into the room, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And then somebody pointed out, they're like, "Why are you apologizing? It's like we're getting to see the best parts of everybody."
Yeah.
And that's been really cool. It's not only communicating more formally, more frequently, but it's getting to have one-on-one, really personal conversations with people, checking in with people, sometimes meeting their kids or seeing the piece of artwork that they ran in with. Yeah. Their cats. I didn't mention cats. I feel bad about that. But that's been really great professionally. I've really enjoyed that. And then I think there was one professional silver lining and then one like less so professional silver lining.
Personal. Yeah.
I was going to say, a lot of our events at work had been obviously going to bars or having outings. And so a lot of that has moved virtual. And so it's been really fun to do things like virtual DJ sets. The whole team together, I think, has gotten to do that. And that's just been really fun. I mean, it's not necessarily something that I think is a big, like, professional thing for me. But personally, I find it really fun and a really nice way to connect with people in a time when we're all in our houses.
I think we're all itching to get back, and we're going to get there. Simone, if you could share with us, please.
Totally.
Personal and professional.
Yeah, I think like everyone's threshold has just like increased substantially. I find that like before, and the Caitlin kind of spoke to this a little bit, but like before we had this, oh my gosh, like what are people going to think of me? And I just love how it's become so relaxed. through even the candidate process, right? Interviewing people, recruiting people, there's a level of, oh, the phone just went out. They need to, I'm not going to get
my Bluetooth is not connecting.
I'm not counting anything against anyone. I think this is the year of yes, because why would you not say yes? Like what's the worst that can happen? We're literally already at a point where it's so, strangely kind of apocalyptic that we might as well just, embrace this moment and go, yes, I'm going to go on a trip to Mexico and I'm going to work remotely and I'm going to take this call from my hotel room, because why not? Right? It's all good. So
as long as getting your work done.
Exactly. As long as you're getting your work done, as long as you feel like you're hitting your, SLAs and like all the goals, great. And then the other thing I think is personal is it's been kind of nice to have a lot of, time at home. I have to just preface this with the fact that there are so many people hurting. It's really bad out there. And, living in Los Angeles, homelessness has increased. You see a lot of people getting affected by this in the worst way. This is not, we're in this for a long time and we're going to see the effects of this over a long period of time. And I wish everyone who's, had tough experiences, hopefully everything gets better for them soon. But I do think that this has been an opportunity for me. I mean, I just got married in February and, I have a dog at home and you're spending so much more time at home, which has been, positive. It's a moment to check in and really think outside the box on ways to, entertain yourself and ways to like bond with those around you sort of in your bubble. So I think those are the two things I would add.
Thank you. That's awesome. Veracelle, bring us home here.
Sure. So professionally, I think creating this how we work 2.0 kind of official, unofficial culture guide has been the silver lining. And whether or not we're mentally writing it down or it's just been kind of baked into our processes, I'm really proud of everyone at Resident. I'm proud of our leadership team that we have been able to foster an even stronger culture and that HR has played a part in kind of navigating that. And it's a great place to work. So that to me is the end all be all of the silver lining that we're continuing to build. So that's good. Professionally, personally, so I have a husband, a puppy, 2 guinea pigs, and 3 teenagers. So we are quite the household here. And the silver lining, which I don't think my children would agree, is that never once in a million years would my husband and I have thought, oh my God, we are eating dinner together.
Exactly.
5:30, a home cooked meal on a Wednesday or a Tuesday, and whether or not our kids realize that we're having conversations and they're chatting and the phones are actually down, and it's just this, and I don't take that for granted at all. And it's a lot of family time. It's a lot of family time, but it's something that I don't take for granted, and it's quite lovely. And I love to cook. My husband loves to cook, and so that has been, and I know it's also with many folks too, that's been the ultimate silver lining, and that it's with family. So.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank all three of you for taking an hour out of your busy day and sharing with us an insight into your professional side, your company's, your organization, your teams, and your personal side as well too. And I want to thank everyone at home for joining us along for the ride. We will share this on YouTube and Facebook for anyone who was unable to attend today. Ladies, thank you again. I look forward to staying in touch with each of you, continuing to build our relationships. Everyone watching at home, abroad, on the internet, and the pool, Cabo, I don't care where you are. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next week for another live episode of the podcast. You know where to find us at thepodcast.com, and we'll catch you all next week. Ladies, hang with me for 1 second here as I sign off.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search The Podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.